Grandpa to prove fox spirit's milk more nutritious than human milk, forcibly using the secret method, caught a fox spirit who can transform into a human form, breastfeed me, and when I turned a year old, I actually crawled over, hugging fox spirit and sucking it up. But since that day, the village is not peaceful. There was a yellow rat infestation. Those weasels also took the villagers' chickens. Later, the villagers went up the mountain to collect herbs. Every once in a while, a few people fall to their deaths, and the people in the village couldn't sit still. They all think Grandpa kidnapped fox spirit, breastfeed me, aroused the revenge of the weasel, and that being young and sick was a curse. The villagers have offered to send me away many times. Grandpa doesn't agree with anything. He almost got into a fight several times. It was at the height of the conflict between my family and the villagers. Just as tensions reached their peak, an event shocked and astounded everyone. That afternoon, hundreds of luxury cars lined up to come to the village. The reason was simple. The legendary green-robed ghost hand, who had retired long ago, decided to come out of retirement for one final fortune-telling. It was then that my family discovered Grandpa was none other than the famous green-robed ghost hand. Our family was part of the Maycle clan, and Grandpa was its 16th generation heir. The visitors were powerful figures, including the richest man from the provincial capital. They all sought Grandpa's final prophecy. Grandpa had made 3,964 accurate predictions in his life. Not one was wrong, breaking his retirement vow to make another prediction would shorten his lifespan. The recipient would also inherit his karmic burden. That's why everyone fought for it. Grandpa's condition was simple. Each visitor had to bring a baby girl my age. Grandpa would choose one as my future bride. Final prophecy would be gifted to the chosen family. However, the one who received the prophecy wasn't one of the prominent figures. It was the Liu family from Gansu, a middle-class household. Liu Chen only came to join the commotion, never expecting to be chosen by Grandpa. After receiving Grandpa's prophecy, he arranged a betrothal between his daughter and me. From then on, I had a nominal wife. Her name was Liu Celina. Liu Chen and Grandpa made an agreement that when I turned 21, I would join the Liu family as a live-in son-in-law. After Liu Chen left, this major event in the national Feng Shui community concluded. After my engagement, the village became peaceful. No more strange incidents occurred, and my health began to improve. But Grandpa's health gradually declined. When I was 10, Grandpa summoned me to the back mountain with a serious expression. He asked me if I was ready to become the 17th generation heir of the Maycle clan. Hearing this, I was overjoyed, because it had always been my dream. Still, I couldn't help but ask Grandpa why he always refused to teach my second uncle all his life, but chose to pass his knowledge directly to me. Grandpa sighed deeply, saying it wasn't a good thing. Divination and fortune-telling are about prying into heavenly secrets, and one is destined to suffer 5 defects and 3 shortages. Thus, truly skilled fortune-tellers often meet tragic ends. They die young or face unfortunate lives. I was born under the 5 defects and 3 shortages curse. That's why Grandpa decided to pass his legacy to me, because it was my destiny. From that day, I became the 17th generation heir of the Maycle clan. Grandpa gave me the title Kunlun. I asked why I was called Kunlun, and Grandpa said, our lineage originated from the sacred Kunlun mountains, and I was destined to be the last heir. Kunlun was the place all Feng Shui masters longed for, and Grandpa hoped that one day I could truly stand atop Kunlun mountain. By doing so, perhaps I would gain the strength to completely change the destiny of Feng Shui masters. From that day onward, Grandpa began teaching me the secrets of Feng Shui. I was highly talented and learned quickly. Even Grandpa often praised my abilities. The technique of dragon seeking and vein tracing that Grandpa mastered at 35 years old, I had already grasped at the age of 14 because I spent all my time immersed in Feng Shui. I became introverted and didn't have many friends. Villagers whispered that I was an unlucky person, so I often endured their cold stares. But I had long grown used to these things. What I found hardest to bear, however, was Grandpa's strict rule. I was forbidden from practicing Feng Shui for others before 21. He said that if I broke this rule, everything he had worked for would go to waste. This restriction, paired with my uselessness despite my abilities, was a constant source of anguish for me. One day, I noticed the girl I liked, Jenny, with a faint green aura on her face. There was also a small red mark at the corner of her mouth, a sign of impending misfortune of a lewd nature. Sure enough, the next day, on her way home from school, she was dragged into a cornfield by the village idiot. That day, I was utterly devastated, feeling as though I had been complicit. I didn't dare face Jenny, so I watched her secretly. When I saw the flame-like aura on her right shoulder flickering toward her neck, I knew she was contemplating suicide because of the humiliation. Unable to stand it, I secretly told her father to keep a close eye on her. In the end, she was saved, but I fell gravely ill as a result. 3 days later, I finally regained consciousness, only to hear devastating news. Grandpa had passed away suddenly on the second day of my illness. Grandpa had gone alone to the burial grounds in the back mountain, found the worst Feng Shui spot, dug a hole, and buried himself alive. He didn't even use a coffin. No one knew how he managed to bury himself, and if not for my mother's dream, we might never have known that he had passed away. I knelt before his grave and cried for a whole day and night. I knew he had sacrificed himself to save me, giving me his remaining lifespan. This event devastated me. I felt that I had caused his death. After that, I dropped out of school and moved into Grandpa's old house. My only companions were the Feng Shui texts that Grandpa left behind. Beyond those, what kept me going was a belief. My wife, Celina. This was Grandpa's greatest wish. He wanted us to marry because only Celina could resolve my destined misfortunes. Finally, on my 21st birthday, a Mercedes worth millions stopped at my door. That day, I took the rare opportunity to clean myself up. I even put on the new clothes my mom bought for me. I hid in the inner room like a shy girl, too nervous to come out. I just peeked outside through the window. What I saw was a youthful and beautiful girl. She jumped out of the car. Her bright, lively eyes scanned around curiously. She seemed to find everything here so fascinating. She was my wife-to-be, Celina. I had imagined her appearance countless times, but I still never expected her to look this stunning.
Dad, come on, get out of the car already. But Master, you talked about lives in this kind of old mud house. Are you sure this is the right place?
Celina asked with a laugh. Her tone didn't carry any disdain. It seemed to just be pure curiosity. But after hearing it, I suddenly felt uncomfortable. It was a feeling I couldn't quite explain. A few seconds later, a chubby middle-aged man stepped out of the car. Smiling, he said, "Yes, this is the place. This is it." Even though Feng Shui isn't popular anymore these days, back in the day, it caused quite a stir. Can you believe it? The road you're standing on now, even the wealthiest man in 3 provinces, Mr. Ma, once walked it. This middle-aged man was none other than Liu Qingshan from back then. But now, he was the richest man in Gansu City, owning countless businesses. I instinctively wanted to read Liu Chen's face, but it was obvious. He'd had surgery. Not only had his eyebrows been adjusted, but even the skin on his temples had been lifted. No wonder he could change his fate, but even the skin on his temples had been lifted. This must have been under my grandfather's guidance. At that moment, my mom, who was cooking, stepped out. Smiling, she looked at them and said,
"So you're the in-laws, right? This girl is truly beautiful. Our family really hit the jackpot."
After saying that, she shouted my name loudly, motioning for me to come out and greet them. Hearing this, I blushed and slowly walked out. Celina saw me and gave me a few glances up and down. Then she asked,
"What's your name?"
I scratched my head and softly replied, "My name is Kunlun." It was a name my grandfather gave me. Hearing my name, she chuckled. Smiling, she looked at me and asked,
I heard your grandfather was a Feng Shui master. You must know how to read faces, right? Why don't you take a look for me and see if our marriage will work out?
I shook my head solemnly after hearing that and replied seriously, "That's not something I can just casually do. We aren't officially married yet. My grandfather once told me, after I turned 21, I can start reading fortunes for people, but not for the Liu family. Only after Celina and I are officially married, I can read fortunes for the Liu family. Otherwise, it would lead to many disasters." I swore in front of my grandfather's grave that I'd never go against his instructions in this lifetime.
Even if you can, I don't believe in it. People in the big cities don't follow this anymore. You're just superstitious.
Celina said with a laugh. I didn't argue with her. I just firmly held my ground. It seemed their visit wasn't as simple as it appeared. Soon, my mom finished cooking. We all sat down to a country-style meal. During the meal, I barely spoke. Celina, however, was like a little sprite, constantly talking about how colorful and exciting the world outside was, that encouraging me to explore more. After we were full and satisfied, Liu Chen suddenly turned to my mom and said, "Auntie, you see, old master has been gone for years now. Back then, our children had a betrothal arranged, but times have changed. Nowadays, people advocate for freedom in marriage. So, should we perhaps consider annulling this engagement?" Hearing this, my mom's face instantly turned pale. She was dumbstruck at a loss for words. Meanwhile, I stood up abruptly and firmly said, "No." Even though I really liked Celina's looks, I wasn't a shameless person. If she didn't like me, I wouldn't force it. But this was something my grandfather had set up, risking his own fortune for me. I couldn't destroy my grandfather's legacy. Celina, however, didn't see it that way. She thought I was trying to cling to her.
You've just received too little education and have no idea about the world outside. I just graduated from college, yet you haven't even finished high school. I don't mean to look down on you, but we really don't have anything in common. We're just not suited for each other.
Her tone wasn't harsh at all. She was even considerate of my feelings. But hearing it made my heart ache. In fact, although I didn't finish high school, I learned a lot from my grandfather. I dare say that I am more talented than her, Celina, but I just couldn't say it out loud. The atmosphere grew awkward. At this moment, Liu Chen stood up. He placed a locked suitcase on the table. He said gently, "Back then, I did indeed owe the old master a favor, although I don't know if my rise has anything to do with him. I, Liu Chen, am not the kind of person who betrays my word. Here's 1 million in cash. Consider it compensation for our family's decision to break the engagement." My mother, a traditional rural woman, was stunned when she heard 1 million. I, on the other hand, had no concept of money, so I didn't want the 1 million. But my grandfather told me, never force anything. A forced marriage is never sweet. Plus, my stubborn nature took over, and I said impulsively, "Fine." Liu Chen smiled in satisfaction after hearing that. Then he took out a marriage cancellation agreement for me to sign. I took the pen and asked him seriously, "Liu, uncle, maybe you don't believe in yin and yang or Feng Shui, but I still want to remind you, my grandfather was no ordinary person. If the arrangement he made is broken like this, have you thought about the consequences?" Liu Chen didn't take it seriously. He replied, "I'm here to break off the engagement, so what am I afraid of? Don't worry, Kunlun. If there's any trouble, it'll be our Liu family's issue. It has nothing to do with you." After hearing that, I reluctantly signed my name. Just after signing, I noticed a black mark on Liu Chen's forehead. It was an obvious omen of disaster. I didn't plan on telling him. It's not that I'm being malicious, but I just couldn't break my grandfather's rule. Soon, the Liu family left. Before leaving, Celina left me her contact information, telling me to find her if I had time. She could take me to see more of the world. When their car was about to leave the village, I saw a yellow weasel. Suddenly, it scurried under the car's undercarriage. It crouched beneath the chassis. 2 strange eyes were staring at me, spinning wildly. This wasn't just any weasel. It was a true, mystical, and eternal yellow immortal. Seeing this scene, I knew things were bad. The Liu family was about to face big trouble. In rural folklore, there are 5 immortal creatures: fox, weasel, hedgehog, snake, and finally, the rat. Among these, the yellow immortal is the most sinister. Once cursed by one of these, even if they come for revenge, or even if they come to repay a debt, it will still cause chaos, turning life upside down. I secretly felt for the Liu family and Celina. Although today she broke off our engagement, she didn't demean or mock me. She didn't say anything that hurt my pride. But I couldn't go against my grandfather's rules, so I was powerless to help. I could only watch them leave helplessly. When I got home, I felt extremely depressed. The belief that had supported me all these years had just collapsed. I couldn't process it all at once. In the end, I grabbed some copper coins and went to my grandfather's grave. I decided to ask for a divination from my grandfather. I used the traditional 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. For me, divination was simple and the most accurate. With a deep breath, I tossed the copper coins. When I saw the symbol of the hexagram, I was totally stunned. I even doubted for a moment if this was even my own hexagram. This hexagram was called the Return of the Demon. It's a bad omen in the love-related hexagrams. Always, it's a woman chasing a man, but this really didn't fit my situation. So I continued to interpret it and discovered that this main hexagram had 2 changing hexagrams hidden inside. One of the changing hexagrams was thunder and water resolve. A middle upper hexagram. It suggested that I shouldn't dwell on the past marriage and head southwest for a new life. The other one was water and marsh boundary, a supreme hexagram. It indicated unlimited possibilities and even the potential for greatness. But from the hexagram, I realized I had to move forward with determination. It carries the meaning of slaying generals and sealing gods. But from the hexagram symbol, I must take decisive action to ensure my name becomes famous. It meant I must stay true to my path, start and finish with integrity, and actively resolve the crisis. Looking at this mysterious and unpredictable hexagram, I suddenly smiled because in my heart, I had already made a decision. If it were anyone else, they might choose to go southwest for safety, but I was determined to go for the second changing hexagram. not to slay generals and seal gods, but to avoid disappointing my grandfather. He had arranged things for me, and I would take charge of them. If it tried to slip away, I'd snatch it back. With that, I headed straight home. I packed my things, ready to go to Ganzan City to find Celina. Just then, my mom came running over. She looked at me and asked,
What are you doing? Why are you packing? Don't tell me you're running away from home.
I was about to explain.
Look at you, all pathetic. A city girl breaks off an engagement and you're thinking of running away.
Look outside, who's here? After hearing my mom, I looked toward the living room, confused, and saw a young woman standing there. She was dressed in luxurious silks, clearly from a wealthy family, but lacking the fashionable, elegant aura of Celina. I knew she was Mary Jane, the daughter of a local wealthy family from a neighboring village. Her family grows medicinal herbs, and they are very rich, a renowned wealthy family in the area. I had no connection with Mary Jane, but seeing her holding an ancient wooden box in her arms, I curiously asked my mom, "What's going on here?" My mom winked at me and said happily,
You're in luck. Mary Jane is here to propose. She wants to marry you.
I stood there, my mouth wide open, stunned. I was known as the most unlucky person in the village, and the fact that I became the 17th generation disciple of the Maycle clan. Only my grandfather knew, no one else. So logically, how could a noble girl like her be interested in me? Seeing I wasn't responding, my mom got a bit upset.
What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and accept the betrothal gift. You're still thinking about that city swan. I think Mary Jane is much better than that city girl.
I wasn't rejecting Mary Jane. I was just thinking about the hexagram. At the time, I didn't understand how a girl could chase after a guy, but now I get it. It's because it's a very ominous hexagram, so I became extra cautious. I took the redwood box from Mary Jane. As soon as I touched it, my body stiffened. Wow, this small wooden box was unusually heavy. I subtly activated the internal energy, and that energy made the box feel heavier. Without hesitation, I opened the box. What I saw inside shocked me. Inside the box were rare treasures, many of which were on the verge of being lost, at least several hundred years old. Although the Jane family was wealthy, they couldn't possibly afford such items. I gently sniffed with my nose and immediately smelled the stench of decay. These items clearly just came from a tomb. There were indeed a few large tombs on the back mountain, but anyone who went there never returned. This made me wonder, where did Mary Jane get these things? Seeing me lost in thought, my mom, upset, reminded me.
Son, what are you still standing there for? Bring Mary Jane inside to sit. I'll go get her some water.
I snapped back to reality and suddenly said, "Mom, are you crazy?" My mom glared at me and said,
I think you're the crazy one.
I yelled anxiously, "Open your eyes and look at who she really is." With that, I suddenly grabbed Mary Jane's wrist and pulled her out of the house. As soon as I grasped her wrist, I suddenly felt a cold, chilling aura coming towards me. I quickly suppressed it with my yang energy. My mom glanced at us. In confusion, she said,
What are you doing? She's the daughter of Jane's family. She's going to be your wife.
I looked at Mary Jane and sneered. Now take another good look at her shadow and see exactly what she is. End of episode 1. If you find it interesting, please like, share, and follow my channel. Thank you for watching the whole video.